Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. As the impeachment trial of President Yoon Suk Yeol continues to unfold, key developments are drawing intense public attention. With the Constitutional Court wrapping up its 8th hearing and scheduling additional sessions, the trial is entering a critical final phase. The court's focus now shifts to assessing conflicting testimonies and handling disputes over procedural fairness, all while navigating external factors that could affect the timeline of the ruling. Meanwhile, parallel criminal proceedings on insurrection charges add further complexity to the legal landscape. To help us break down the progress of the impeachment trial and the potential implications for President Yoon's legal battles, we invite Song Se-ryun, professor of law at Kyung Hee University. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you for inviting me.
And also joining us is Jung W. Hwang, Chief Executive Officer of LawQuant LLC. Great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So let's begin with Professor Song. The Constitutional Court wrapped up its 8th hearing session yesterday. How do you assess the overall progress so far? And also, do you believe enough questioning has been conducted? The court categorized National Assembly's grounds for impeachment into 5 major points. Could you also tell us about the key issues?
Well, it seems like the focus was clearly on the constitutional questions, and I think it was it has been conducted pretty well. But what is important at this point is whether the fairness versus efficiency has been on a right balance. The Constitutional Court is focusing on the major categories on the constitutional questions. They are focusing on the procedures in declaring martial law, the details about the proclamation. Number 1, they're limiting the political activities, military interventions in the National Election Commission, and the attempted seizure of the National Assembly members, and the efforts to detain politicians. So those would answer the questions. Now, at this point, the battle is that because of some damaging testimonies, the defense team is trying to get to more days in which they can cross-examine the witnesses so that they can create more doubts on the justice's mind and also public's mind that the damaging testimony maybe was not a correct one, or there is enough doubts about what they said before so that they could kind of discredit those damaging testimonies. So I think that they are very serious about this, and it clearly is a kind of a point where if they don't create these doubts on the minds of the justices, there will be the result might not be a good one. So that's why they even hinted that they might withdraw from the representation if their requests for more witnesses are not granted. And obviously, for that reason, some more days were put on to the proceedings.
Right. So because of that, it seems like the hearings will get longer. Now to Mr. Hwang, the key issue in yesterday's 8th hearing, like Professor Song touched upon, was whether there was an order to arrest political figures during the declaration of the martial law. And former National Intelligence Service Deputy Director Hong Jang-won said that there was indeed such an order, whereas National Intelligence Service Director Cho Tae-yong questioned the credibility of that testimony. How do you think the justices will assess these conflicting statements?
Well, they will definitely look into the credibility of both witnesses. But at the end of the day, I find all these little squabbles a bit of academic exercise, in the sense that President Yoon's legal team is trying to buy more time. So they're raising all these objections. That doesn't really touch on the overall arc of his case. The fact remains that he declared emergency martial law, that infamous, notorious Decree Number 1 went into effect. He sent armed troops into the National Assembly and National Election Commission. I mean, because they cannot really attack those facts, which was televised, and reported, publicized for everyone in the world to see, I think they're sort of attacking all these marginal side issues. I mean, if those testimonies were crucial to contesting the facts that I just outlined, yeah, it will be kind of really crucial what justices think about. But, you know, the basic facts that I just lined kind of is the entirety, almost entirety of the impeachment case. So I think this is just, you know, their latest tack to delay and, you know, buy more time so that some extrajudicial political developments can turn the tides for President Yoon.
Right. So like you've mentioned, the facts will be focused on. Now, President Yoon's legal team has criticized the court's handling of the trial, claiming it prioritized speedy proceedings over fairness. They took issue with the fact that written statements from the investigative agencies were accepted as evidence, even though key witnesses have changed their testimony. And the Constitutional Court maintains that it's following legal precedents. Professor Song, what's your opinion on this dispute?
Well, the dispute is not an uncommon one. People make statements, but later on, for various reasons, they recant or change their testimonies. That's why it is important to preserve what has been offered as a testimony if it is given freely before. So unless there is important reasons to change the testimonies, probably court will look to preserve those. Now, the evidences are not the substitute for the truth, which means even if there were some changed testimonies, the justices are entitled to give a proper weight that they think is appropriate. So they'll look at the testimonies, and even if there is a change, they'll probably give a due weight to whether it is convincing or not. But I think that the defense strategy, as Mr. Hwang has said, is trying to attack every little side of it, side issues. Probably one of the tactics is to make it a more of a public opinion piece rather than the strictly legal one, which is a plausible defense strategy, but I don't know if the justices will buy into that.
Right, but following the Yoon side's request, the Constitutional Court scheduled additional hearings for the impeachment trial, and it announced that it will hold 2 more sessions on the 18th and the 20th, although Yoon has requested a rescheduling for the 20th. What's the reason for scheduling these additional hearings, and what kind of key issues should be noted, Mr. Hwang?
Well, the presidential legal team has requested additional witnesses, as well as they want to be given sufficient time. I mean, they've been complaining about the kind of a brisk pace of the hearings so far anyway. They're complaining that twice a week has been too much. So this is sort of continuation of their, complaints about how seriously and how fast tracking the whole proceeding was. So I think the court is mindful of the fact that they want to at least give the appearance of fairness and listening to the defense arguments seriously. But at the same time, I don't see the hearings lasting too much beyond next week, basically. I think there was a serious possibility that it could have ended yesterday on Thursday as of the 8th hearing, but they did decide to give 2 more hearings, and we'll see what happens. But I'll be really surprised if we get 11th and 12th hearings.
Mm-hmm. Now, regarding the timeline for the hearings, it seems like it will also be affected by President Yoon's impeachment trial with the appointment of Ma Eun-hyuk as a justice. Could you explain for us why is this the case? Now, given this, when do you think the final ruling in President Yoon's impeachment trial will be delivered, Professor Song?
Sure. It will create in my mind, massive confusion. Because if the Justice Ma joins the team, then the trial probably has to reopen to accommodate the late joining of the justice. So the delays probably unavoidable if that happens. But at this point, I don't know if the justices will risk making too much of changes at the last minute. So that will be a serious consideration. Now, in April, I think the date is April 18th, the two justices are scheduled to come off the bench. So if we have a delay beyond that, probably this trial will meet a very, very difficult position. I think they are trying to be mindful of that in order to, keep the schedule of 180 days. I think the realistic deadline is April 18th, so that's why I think that the court is trying to move briskly, at the same time giving enough benefit of doubt and granting chances to put on their defense on the president's team.
Right, so as of now, it's highly likely for the final ruling to be delivered before April 18th, right?
Right, I think that's the safe bet.
Right. Now, meanwhile, on February 10th, the court concluded arguments in the jurisdiction dispute over acting President Choi Sang-mok's decision to defer Ma Eun-hyuk's appointment and postpone the ruling. Mr. Hwang, how do you expect the Constitutional Court to make a decision, and what kind of implications might it have for the next steps of the acting President Choi?
Well, I mean, this is sort of a big push made by both acting president as well as the ruling party, thinking that the nominee, Justice Ma, might actually have, undue liberal influence on the Constitutional Court. Personally, I just don't see Justice Ma being added to the Constitutional Court changing the outcome too much. It seems that the presidential legal defense as well as the ruling party sort of counting the fact that there might be a couple of sympathetic justices on the Constitutional Court, but observing the Constitutional Court's proceedings so far, I'm not sure really they can really count on the sympathies of at least so-called couple of conservative justices on the Constitutional Court. So at the end of the day, do I think it's going to matter a whole lot with respect to the impeachment trial? Not really.
Mm-hmm. Now, regarding the National Human Rights Commission of Korea's decision to recommend President Yoon's right to defend himself and highlighting that in the impeachment trial have been highlighted. Now, some civic groups have criticized this decision, calling for reforms within the commission. Now, we wonder at this point, Professor Song, what kind of issue motivated the Commission's such kind of recommendation, and how might this affect President Yoon's ongoing trial?
Well, if it's a general statement saying that from the human rights point of view, all the detainees, all the people in the court system should be given their chances to put on a defense. Which is something that you don't have to say at this point, unless there is a serious concern that that kind of human rights is being violated. I think it's an indication that this country is divided on ideological side and politically motivated. And now there are 10 commissioners in there. The ideological leanings have been pretty clear. The fact that they try to put a recommendation and influence the political discourse of it, not the legal side of it, I think it's unfortunate. In my personal opinion is that unless there is a serious violations and serious concerns, they should have kept it a subdued opinions and let the Constitutional Court to do their business and get to the procedures the way they see fit.
Mm-hmm. Let's also move on to the criminal trial related to insurrection charges. Now, separate from the impeachment trial, the first pre-trial hearing on being the leader of the rebellion will take place on the 20th. Mr. Hwang, what are the main issues in this criminal trial?
Well, it will actually have a little different facade in the sense that in a criminal trial, you actually have to go through the criminal elements of insurrection. And do remember, as still President Yoon is the president of the Republic of Korea, the only charge that can be brought against him at this point is insurrection charges. So for the time being, the prosecutors will only have to focus on that. But if, and I think this is most likely, the Constitutional Court reaches the decision probably end of March, and I think the removal of President Yoon is highly likely, and then there will be a whole slew of other charges that will be charged against him, among others, abuse of power and so forth. So I think we should probably wait until the Constitutional Court's case, the impeachment trial at the Constitutional Court is over before the criminal case is fully formed, because once it's been removed, all those presidential privileges and immunity disappear.
Right, and in addition to the criminal trial on the 20th, a hearing will be held on President Yoon's request to be released from detention. Professor Song, could you explain for us why did the court decide to address the detention cancellation request on the same day as the insurrection case's first pretrial hearing? And what are the chances that the court will grant President Yoon's release?
Well, that little consolidation makes sense because they comes out of the same set of facts, and from the efficiency point of view, I think it's a right decision to do so, rather than putting on a separate proceedings when the facts and witnesses are all the same. Now, the chances of releasing the president, I think the still concern is whether he would tamper evidences or get to the potential witnesses. That if the court still thinks it's the concern, they're not going to release it now. They look to what happened on the streets as one of the indications of whether there is a chance that the releasing of the president will make it more of the trial of public opinions. Now, we saw that the crowds, motivated by the political ideological side, had violently attacked the court. And I think that's in the minds of the justices. And I think that the safe bet is to keep him detained during the proceedings. That's my personal opinion at this point.
Right. And like I've mentioned a while ago, President Yoon has requested for rescheduling of a date on the 20th. There is speculation that the Yoon's legal team may adopt a delay strategy, saying that it's difficult to handle both the impeachment trial and the criminal trial at the same time. Mr. Hwang, when do you expect a ruling in the final trial, and what kind of steps lie ahead for us?
Well, I think the most likely scenario we are looking at is that the 10th hearing will be the last hearing, so we'll hear the final arguments from President Yoon's legal team as well from the National Assembly legal team. And we can probably expect the Constitutional Court to render its final ruling about a month from then. So we are looking at end of March for the conclusion of the impeachment trial. And I think the most likely outcome is removal of President Yoon, which means that South Korea has to hold a presidential election 60 days from that point. So we are looking at a fairly brisk political schedule starting in March.
So we might be able to have a presidential election on May, possibly?
Exactly, yes. That's the likely schedule I'm looking at.
All right. I'm afraid we will have to leave our discussion right here. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your insights. Professor Song and Mr. Hwang, of course, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.